Hello everyone, my name is Kenton Kavestu. I'm an ex-BCG consultant, an ex-Googler, and the founder of Rocketblocks, an online platform that helps candidates prepare for case interviews. In today's Rocketblocks mini lesson, we're going to be talking about how to approach market sizing or estimation questions. These questions come up all the time in consulting case interviews, not to mention product management or brand management interviews as well. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about 3 tips that you can use no matter what the market sizing or estimation question you are facing is, and it will help you get through that problem. So let's go ahead and jump in. Tip number 1 is to round early and round often. The reason this is important is that rounding the numbers you're working with makes the math that you're going to do significantly easier. And in addition, interviewers aren't concerned with seeing you go through super tedious steps of math. What they want to see is that you can build a reasonable estimate that is directionally accurate. And that's why rounding numbers as you're going through these exercises is so helpful and so important. So to put an example on it, imagine you're trying to estimate the number of food deliveries that happen daily in New York. And you know as a starting point that what you're going to use is that the city of New York has a population of 8.5 million. So you could start your estimate using that number, but you might, if you think ahead a little bit, realize, okay, well, maybe I'm going to use that number to get to the number of households there are in New York City and then segment the households by, how many use food delivery or don't and the frequency they do. So you're thinking ahead a little bit and you realize, okay, working with 8.5 million is going to be a little bit tough, especially if maybe my next estimate is that, the number of people per household is 3. So what you could do in this scenario is you could round right off the bat and round something like 8.5 up to 9 million, especially knowing that the next step is going to be to divide by 3 people per household, which is going to give you nice, clean math to work with, and again, is going to retain the directional accuracy that you really want in a question like this. Tip number 2 is to default to using a top-down style of estimating versus using a bottoms-up style of estimating. And let's look at this through the lens of our New York City food delivery sizing case. So if you are actually trying to size that particular market and you use a bottoms-up methodology, what this would mean is that you would start by thinking about individuals in New York City and what their food delivery habits might be. And in the beginning, this might be fairly easy. You think about, okay, well, I have a friend who lives in New York City. He's fairly busy with work, so he probably orders delivery once a day. Then, I know there's some people that really like to cook. They don't like food delivery or find it too expensive, so they probably, never use food delivery. Then there's some other people that maybe use it when it's convenient or not. The challenge with that is once you've thought through all those use cases, which forces you to think about all the use cases right off the bat as well, which is tough, is that you then need to figure out, okay, how many people are there in New York City like my friend? Is there 10,000? Is there 15,000? Is there 100,000, a million? And you've got to do that for every single use case, which is a lot of detailed estimating, which opens up a lot of different stages where the estimate could go wrong. Now, if you flip the problem on its head and come at it from a top-down perspective, you start, as we talked about in the last tip, with the overall population of New York. And we said, okay, we're going to take 8.5 million, round it up to 9 million, and then we're going to assume there's 3 people per household. So, okay, we've got 3 million households in New York. Now you can say, okay, I think some households probably never order food delivery. You can segment that way. And maybe that's X percent of the population. Some people probably rely on food delivery a lot, and that's this percent of the population. Then there's some people in the middle here. It gives you a way to kind of structure and whittle down the universe that is still going to give you the level of directional accuracy you want without getting into super detailed assumptions about how many people there are, like your particular friend, etc., in a given city in this particular case. Tip number 3 is know your key facts and figures. Now, rarely, if ever, on any of these mini lessons have I suggested that you memorize things, because generally, critically thinking and understanding the process is much more important than knowing facts in isolation. However, for market sizing and estimating questions, there is a big exception because knowing some key facts and figures is really helpful for two reasons. The first is that if you want to do a top-down estimate, which as we talked about is really useful, you need to know where to start. So for example, populations are really useful in that particular case. Knowing the population of the United States is roughly 330 million, or the population of China is 1.3 billion roughly, or the global population is around 7 billion. So those type of numbers can be really helpful for that case. The second reason is that it's really helpful to have some numbers and benchmarks so that you can sanity check the answers that you're actually coming up with. So say, for example, you were estimating the amount of revenue that a national sports retail chain does, and you come up with the estimate 25 billion, and you're trying to think, well, is that a reasonable amount of revenue for a national chain of sports retailers or not? If you know that someone like Walmart, which is the biggest retailer in the world, does something like 500 billion in sales annually, it gives you something that you can triangulate on, and you can say, okay, my estimate, they do about 5% of the revenue Walmart does, so given their particular scale and their footprint, I think that seems reasonable. Or, oh no, that's way too big given this particular retail and their footprint. So it gives you a nice way to sanity check your actual answers as well. Okay, so one final thought on market sizing and estimating questions. The good news is that this type of drill you can definitely get better at with targeted practice and taking these tips into mind. And the good news is there's ample opportunities to find practice on a daily basis. So for example, if you open up the Wall Street Journal and see an article that says the Ford Motor Company did X billion dollars in revenue in a particular year, take that number, store it away in your memory, and do a market sizing drill to see if you can come up with that number. Use the tips that we just went through, round early and often, look for opportunities to make that math easy, use a top-down approach, and know some of your key facts and figures. So thank you again for watching. We've got tons of Rocket Blocks mini lessons that come out on a weekly basis. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. There's a big red button below, and that means you'll get all our videos as soon as they come out. So thanks again for watching, and have a great day.